All right, fifth graders, so this is Mr. Combs, and I'm here to go over lesson 19 problem set. One of the things I've done on these past couple videos is I've done the work in advance, and I'm just going to explain the work because if it was me drawing out all these shapes, it would take a long time. So the first thing, we're going to look at A. So we're looking to draw the figures in each box with the attributes listed. That just means what it's talking about here, for example, 2 right angles. And then we're going to start naming the different kinds of shapes that this would be. So the first thing I'm going to do is, when I was looking at a rhombus with 2 right angles, I know that a rhombus is a parallelogram with 4 equal sides. So the first thing I did was I started by making my 1 right angle here, okay, to make the L, okay, that kind of uppercase L. And then I realized that I had to put a second right angle, so I did this other side up here to make a right angle. And what I realized then is that for it to have parallel sides, it was going to be a square. Okay, so 4 equal sides and 4 right angles. The other names of that shape are going to be a rhombus, a kite, a square, a rectangle, a parallelogram, a trapezoid, and a quadrilateral. Okay, moving on. All right, so I know now, okay, that my kite is a quadrilateral whose 4 sides can be grouped into pairs of equal length adjacent sides. So that means that each one of these sides that is next to each other is the same length. Okay, so I use my ruler to help me measure out. If you don't have a ruler or a protractor, you can do the best you can, okay, with what you have, all right? Remember, we're not requiring you guys to do that. So here I have my kite, and I drew sides that were next to each other that had the same length, okay? And so then I know that this was a kite, okay? And all those sides are equal. It is also a rhombus, a parallelogram, a trapezoid, and a quadrilateral. So it's not going to be any of those squares or rectangles because it doesn't have any right angles. And I know that by using my protractor, which I used to help myself measure out these angles. So for example, I had 110 right there. On this one, I had it be equal to 70, right? So that one was equal to 70. Okay, all right, moving on right now. So I have a kite with 4 right angles. Okay, I encountered the same thing as this problem right up here, right? When we have 1 right angle for these kites or parallelograms, ones with equal sides, right? We're gonna end up making squares, okay? This last one, D, was a little bit trickier. So a kite with 2 pairs of adjacent sides equal. So the pairs are not equal to each other, but the pairs of adjacent sides. So for example, if I had line A, line B, line C, and then line D, okay, for example, A and B are those adjacent pairs. They're next to each other. They're going to be equal. And then C and D is also that adjacent pair. They're next to each other. So those ones are also going to be equal. Okay, moving down to part 2, A and B. Measure the angles of the figures with your protractor and record the measurements of those figures. Okay, so there's a couple here that we can do just knowing how much a right angle is. Okay, so I know that all of these angles in here are right angles, so each one of those angles is going to be 90 degrees. And I encourage you to pause the video at any time. We're just going to keep moving. So I want you to think about just pausing the video if you need to catch up, time to write things down if you're missing anything, okay? When I measured my angles of my kite, okay, what it showed me is that my angles on opposite sides, okay, are going to be equal, all right? So I have 110 for this angle. You can see it's opening up that way to be an obtuse angle. If I flip this around, that would be 110 as well. It's opening up, okay? If we're looking at it this way, it's a nice acute angle. And then if I flip it around, that one is also a nice acute angle, all right? Okay, so I have 110 degrees, 110 degrees, and then 70 degrees and 70 degrees. Moving right down here to C again. I know that each one of these angles is a right angle, so it's equal to 90 degrees. Okay, and then now moving down here to D, this is where I had to do a little bit more work with my protractor. Okay, I see here that this angle is a nice acute angle. That one's going to be 60 degrees. Okay, and then this angle right here is an obtuse angle, just barely at 100 degrees. Same thing before, obtuse angle, just barely at 100 degrees. And then lastly, this final angle right here, just barely at 100 degrees. Okay. And once again, if you don't have a protractor, that's totally fine. We're not necessarily expecting you guys to do work with something that you do not have. But once again, I'm just going over this to show you. The next part for this is use a marker or crayon to circle pairs of angles that are equal in measure inside each figure. Okay, and we're going to use a different color for each pair. So I have my red pen here, and I also have my handy dandy yellow pen. So I'm going to use my yellow pen first to circle a couple pairs of angles in each one of these that are the same. So I see here, I have my 90-degree angle. I'm going to circle its opposite pair, okay, of 90 degrees. Right here, I have my 110-degree angle. I'm going to circle its opposite side pair of 110 degrees. We're going to do the same thing down here for 90 degrees. And then I see here that I don't necessarily have pairs of angles in these ones that are the same except for 100 degrees. Okay, so each of those could be combined to make a pair that are the same. Okay, moving on, I'm going to circle my other pairs that are equal. 90 degrees and 90 degrees. 70 degrees and 70 degrees. 90 degrees and 90 degrees. And then the 60 degrees one in our kite does not have a pair that is equal. Okay, really quick, just going over what the different names of these shapes could be. So in my rhombus with two right angles, it could be a rhombus, a kite, a square, a rectangle, a parallelogram, a trapezoid, or a quadrilateral. And so I would encourage you to pause the video and copy these down if you do not have these all the way down. A kite that has all sides equal would be a kite, a rhombus, a parallelogram, a trapezoid, or a quadrilateral. A kite with four right angles is going to be a kite, a square, a rhombus, a rectangle, a parallelogram, a trapezoid, or a quadrilateral. Okay, and then this final one here, okay, is going to be a kite, okay, or a quadrilateral. All right, I'm going to pause the video here, and then we're going to keep moving on our back side.